Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing katokaguy in the 15-minute pool on ICC. Let's play e5 double king pawn against katokaguy. And he has a pretty decent rating, 2152. Only played one standard game, though, or one 15-minute game, I should say. His other ratings are not so high. Yeah, this might be literally just the second game he's ever played in this time control. So he's threatening mate on f7. The last time I fell for that was probably, I don't know. I remember losing a game in in school one time, like high school, when I was giving my friend like 30 seconds to 5-minute odds or something, and somehow I walked into a scholar's mate. So that's the last time I remember ever losing to that opening. Okay, so after I've diffused the mate threat on f7, I could play knight d4 here. I think I'll do that actually because I'd be threatening knight takes c2. Yeah, let's go knight d4. He'll probably play queen d1, but there's a chance he might go queen g3, which would attack g7 and also e5. Okay, now I think just d6 is fine. And if he plays ever knight f3, I can pin him with bishop g4. It's a little concerning that he might be able to play knight a4 soon. Knight ge2, you don't see the knight often develop through this square in this line. I wonder if bishop g4 is not bad. Having in mind the idea f3, and then bishop takes f3. It's sort of speculative. I think I'll just keep it simple. I'll just play a6 just so my bishop has a retreat square at all times. Now he pins me. I think I'll just play h6 against that. And if he goes bishop h4, I might play g5. And if he takes on f6 and I take with the queen and then he plays knight d5, I can always play queen d8. I also wonder if I have anything on f2. Probably not. Okay, so he withdraws the bishop. So do I mind him capturing on d4 with the bishop? I don't think so, especially. So I am leaning towards just castling now. Let's say a castle, bishop takes d4, e takes d4, knight d5. Maybe my dark square bishop does get shut out of the game a little bit. I could play c6 if I wanted to keep his knight out of d5. That's not the worst idea in the world. Let's do that. The combination of a6, c6 is unusual to say the least, but I think it's justified. Okay, so now knight a4. He's playing very quickly, but knight a4 should make him nervous because of the possibility of b5 for me. If I play b5 right away, he has knight takes c5, so that's nothing, I don't think. Unless I can go b5, knight takes c5, take on c4 maybe, but it doesn't really seem like it's going to work. I'll probably just play bishop a7 in this position. Queen a5 check, he can always come back or play c3. I could take on e2 right now, but if I take e2, hoping for like queen takes e2, b5, again, he can always just take, but like even knight takes e2, bishop takes c5, or knight takes c5 is possible. So let's just withdraw this guy. This knight a4, I know it attacks the bishop, but it was better played when I hadn't played a6 yet. That would have been the superior timing on that move. So he is finally thinking a little bit. He has slowed down. He takes. Okay, so I want to take with the pawn because this knight is now cut off. It has no retreat square. It can't go to c3. So how is he going to deal with b5? There already may not be a way to do that. Yeah, so I can just play b5 now and fork him. Yep, and he's giving up a piece. Okay, and I could play d5 if I wanted to try to break up his e4 pawn. I think castling is fine. There's a lot of fine things now. I'll just castle. And maybe d5 at this point. Because if he takes, I can get my knight to this excellent d5 square where it'll eye c3 and also attack b4. So yeah, let's play this. He takes, I'll take with my knight. So pure cleanup operation at this point, just playing sensible moves. We've done more than enough to win already, so the onus is not on us to do much of anything, just don't blunder, basically. So he's attacking c6 with that move. Queen f6 looks like a good reply. I could take the pawn on b4, but he'll play a3. Actually, taking the pawn on b4 will attack his knight as well. So maybe I should do that. Yeah, this move is just good. So he noticed the attack on his knight and therefore moved it back. Now maybe c5. I like the idea of opening this long diagonal leading towards their king side. This bishop is now somewhat shut down, but it can always re-enter the game via b8. So we'll do this. Very nice to have the option of knight c3 at any given moment. I think I'm going to play bishop g4 in an effort to provoke him into playing f3, which would weaken the e3 square pretty significantly. Now, bishop f5 or bishop e6, both are good moves. Slight preference for bishop e6. Let's do that. That way, if he ever plays knight g3, it's not coming with tempo. So he jumps back into this square, idea knight c6, most likely. I think queen c7 is fine. He might be going into c4. If I could give katokaguy a piece of advice, it's use your time. Once again, I mean, we see a player in this game that is basically treating a 15-minute game as if it's a 5-minute game. He was lost by the time that he had spent like 1 minute, roughly. So don't play like that if you want to get better, needless to say. So I want to get my knight into e3. Thinking I might go bishop back to d7, which enables knight e3, but also might allow me to play bishop b5 and move his knight from the c4 square. I could do it both ways. I could just play knight e3 and try to trade knights with him, or I can play bishop b5 and try to get the e3 square without trading. I think both options are plenty good. Let's go for bishop b5 without trading. I also like the look of playing bishop b8, attacking his king side. Yeah, now let's just trade. Since he didn't move that knight, I'm happy to trade and then jump my knight into e3. Attacks his rook, also attacks c4. I could play f5 here, forcing his knight away. I could just take on c4. I feel like I can take this pawn almost whenever I want, so. Let's just go f5. His knight is his only semi-active piece. This pawn is going to be weak forever, even if I don't take it, so. What about bishop b8? Bishop b8, g3, maybe queen c6, something like that. Looks okay. I would have preferred to play bishop b8 when my rook was on d8, so I don't interfere with my rook coordination. But this is totally fine too. When you're up a piece, you have a lot more leeway to do certain things. Okay, let's just go attack that f3 pawn. He could pretty much only defend it with queen e2, which walks right into potential discoveries. If queen e2, I think I'll most likely move my bishop so my rooks are connected. Like maybe bishop c7 when the a8 rook will defend e8. Maybe I can go bishop a5 too, attacking the rook on e1. Queen e2 is not a pleasant move to have to make. And he's not even trying to prevent that queen takes f3 move. So we're threatening mate on g2 now. And if knight d3, I think just bishop d6 is fine. Or maybe bishop c7, threatening bishop a5. It's kind of nifty. Nah, bishop d6 is fine and easier. And he's offering to trade, after which I would win the c2 pawn. So
check.
That trade is acceptable. Takes with the knight. Yeah, now I take c2. In order to avoid losing material, he has to take on e8, so
check.
I'll pre-move that. If he moves his rook anywhere but a2, I can play knight takes a3. So he does choose that square. And maybe just knight e3, threatening knight takes c4. Okay, let's move this knight back and we'll just start rolling our d and c pawns. So, very one-sided game. I mean, sometimes this happens. This guy just happened to beat someone in his first game and clearly has a rating much higher than his skill level. But still, any game can be instructive in chess. Always has potential to be that way. Let's just play d3. Bishop e5 is an idea now. Pinning his knight to his rook. Now I think just d2. And after he moves his rook somewhere, I can continue with c3. And his days are pretty much numbered. They have been numbered for a while, but he's going to be losing soon. If knight d1, intending knight takes d1, rook takes e8, which is also winning, I could just play knight d1, c2. So yeah, he resigned. I didn't gain any rating points for that. My rating stayed exactly the same. That's what sometimes happens when you play a provisional. So let's take a look at that. So double king pawn. And he plays knight c3, the Vienna. I usually just play knight c6 against that. There are other moves black can play, but bishop c4, bishop f5. A lot of times Vienna players try to transpose into kind of King's Gambit lines with f4, but less risky versions of a King's Gambit since they're better developed. But he decided not to do that. And queen f3 is not a good move. It's artificial. He probably should play knight f3. And then after knight f6, we could have the so-called canal variation of the Gioco piano. But queen f3 is just a very instant gratification move. It feels great if you get the actual queen takes f7 checkmate, but nobody who plays chess at any competitive level will allow that. So you can't play hope chess. I know Nakamura has dabbled in queen h5 and queen f3 systems, but even he has not played those in about 10 years. And I think that was just a phase he was going through where he was rebellious and wanted to prove that he could beat average GMs like that. So d6, yeah, I don't think there's much to comment on these moves. I'll turn on the engine just for the sake of making it interesting. So the engine actually suggests c6 and then going for d5, trying to break in the center. Yeah, that's not a bad plan, especially since he's already wasted a couple tempos with the queen f3, queen d1 operation. So breaking in the center with d5 is viable for black. Yeah, I like that better than d6 on second glance here. Knight ge2. I thought about bishop g4 in this position, intending f3, bishop takes f3, and then g takes f3, knight takes f3, check, king f1, and then like something like queen d7 trying to come in here. But it just seemed kind of unsound. Yeah, and h3 would be a good way to deal with this. So I opted not to go for that. So instead I played a6, bishop g5, and h6. I don't know that bishop g5 is the best move either. I would probably castle if I were white. So here, h6. If he took, I would take with a queen, and then knight d5, queen d8 would guard this pawn. If he played bishop h4, because I haven't castled yet, I would feel comfortable playing g5. I think this is okay to play now. And then try to prove that his bishop is weak on g3 and fairly inactive because of the pawns, all on dark squares. That's an interesting point that I just saw the computer make too, is that after this, bishop g4 is possible because if f3, I can take here now. And after g takes, knight takes f3, I'm forking the king and the bishop. So I win all my material back and more. So that's a nice point about that. I might have picked up on that if he had played bishop h4. But instead he dropped the bishop back to e3, and now it's like I've gained the move h6 for free. So c6. Yeah, knight a4, another artificial move. It's just, it's too much of a ticky-tack threat. As soon as I play bishop a7, he regrets having played that move because of the threat of b5. So he made too many artificial attacking moves too early on, and his position was not coordinated. Yeah, already here you see he can't really function because of the b5 threat. He's going to be losing material no matter what. Even if he withdraws the bishop, b5 just traps the knight, because via that exchange I took away the knight's only flight square. So b4, b5. And you guys saw the rest. It was pretty straightforward. Like I said, you just have to keep your wits about you in a position that's this winning. Not allow unnecessary counterplay. Control the pace of the game. You know, this is a position that anyone could blow if they're inattentive. So you can't relax entirely. You can never relax in chess until the game is over. But given a choice between a complicated line in this type of position or simplistic line, I'll choose the simplistic line every time, because we're in -5, -6 territory. Why complicate things? So you see at no point did I remotely ever allow him to whip up an attack or somehow gain an initiative for his misery. Yeah, not much more to be said.
Check.
So use your time.
Check.
This is another game that illustrates that. But let's just see like what his time was like at the moment that his position started to become bad. Played the first 5 moves in 12 seconds. Then went back here. I'd say things started getting bad right around knight a4. And that was not a good move. Black's already very comfortable, but he played knight a4, kind of just whipped knight a4 off on move 10, and already he's -2 after that. So his position is difficult, and he's only used 45 seconds, and it's lost, and he's used barely a minute. So, okay, hope you guys enjoyed this standard game, and I'll be back tomorrow with another one. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.